Welcome to another episode of Cyber Bites, the podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Cooper, and today's guest, I'm joined by Ed Bellis, the CEO and co-founder of Empirical Security. Just hot out of stealth after a well-earned sabbatical, Ed's now back in the game. We'll dive into his journey from automotive tech to cybersecurity founder, the lessons learned scaling Kenna to a multi-million exit, and how Empirical is now building AI models for every enterprise. Let's dive in.
All right, and we're on. Introducing Ed Bellis, CEO at Empirical Security. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, how's the sabbatical been?
It's been relaxing. It's been a long time since I've had the ability to relax like this, but spent a lot of time at baseball games and traveling around. So
yeah. Have you got kids and stuff? Or?
I do. I got 4 kids. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're of all sorts of age groups, but they also play a lot of sports, including baseball, basketball, and everything else. So I've spent a lot of time at those games.
Yeah, love it. Well, congratulations on coming out of stealth. It's an exciting time. So before we talk about Empirical Security and what you're doing, we'd love to give the audience a bit of an idea about who you are, your background, how you got into the industry.
Sure. Sounds good. So going all the way back, grew up in Detroit, so obviously coming out of school and into the workforce, spent a lot of time in the automotive industry early on. In tech specifically, this was back in the 90s, worked a little bit with CSC, which is a computer science corporation, and then as the internet started to build out, I went over to Ford Motor Company, and we started to build out a lot of the infrastructure for their World Wide Web team, including their extranet and working with all of their suppliers. Actually spun that out and started working with suppliers across the big 3 at the time, which was Ford, GM, and Chrysler. And so needless to say, spent a lot of time. This was pre-cybersecurity, but definitely head deep in tech. Then got the opportunity to run a division down in Miami for Latin America. This was for a different company altogether, but we were just basically building out early web applications back then. Did that for a while, came up, left Miami after about a year, and made my way to Chicago, which is where I still am today. This was at the peak of the internet bubble at this point, joined a joint venture between Ernst & Young and Sprint. And we were building out mobile Java applications, and mobile phones back then were flip phones, so this is all J2Me. And that was my first foray I had dabbled in security in different pieces, building out infrastructure, building out identity and things like that. But this was my first full time where it was all security that I was focused on, and it was on the AppSec side at the time. So that's kind of how I meandered my way into security. Ultimately, from there, I left, did some time at Bank of America and their security team, and then really ended up with a great opportunity at Orbitz, the online travel company, where I was the first security employee and worked my way up to being a CISO there. So I was at Orbitz for about 6 years or so, and that's where I was really running into a pain point that I ended up later on going out to solve by founding a company called Kenna Security at the time. So founded Kenna. We were at that for about 10 years, built out the risk-based vulnerability management kind of whole space at the time. There was not much of anything out there. Got acquired by Cisco in 2021.
Yep.
Spent about 2.5 years or so at Cisco, mostly running their data science teams with their threat detection and response portfolio of tools. So that included Kenna, but it also included their XDR, their secure endpoint, secure email, all of these things. Basically anything that had any sort of algorithm in it, my team was responsible for that on those products. And then like I said, spent a little bit of time at baseball and basketball games over the past year.
Wow. Well, I know it's a long career. You've just packed into 60 seconds.
Yeah.
To uncover your cat. But I think some of the key points, obviously the success with Kenna is fantastic, and we will talk a little bit about that maybe later. But I was really curious about the transition from going into being from a security practitioner, then CISO or head of security, to a founder. How was that transition for you?
It was interesting. So obviously, just being a first-time founder in general is not an easy thing. Lots of things that you don't know, and as I kind of went through, and my entire background is on the tech side of the house, so anything on the go-to-market side, sales, marketing, marketing, HR, finance, all of these things I knew very little about, really nothing about. So that part was definitely difficult. I will say I had some good fortune, or however it worked out, in the fact that I did have a lot of years on the practitioner side. So at least I knew the problem space, and I knew the problem I was trying to solve. The issue that you end up running into for us was, just because you solved it for a company that looks like Orbitz, is that an entire market? How big of a company can you build from that? Or do you need to expand? There's a lot of things that you figure out, and you learn a lot as you go into the market, as we certainly did, with a lot of fits and starts in the early days, for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So what about the problem space with Empirical? Talk to me about that. How did this all come about? Yeah,
it kind of came about a little bit from... some of the, much like the Kenna kind of came out from lessons learned at being a CISO at Orbitz. A lot of what we're doing at Empirical now is lessons learned while we were at Kenna. Right? So talking to a lot of customers back then, and one of the things that Kenna did, and it did pretty well, was actually, hey, we can tell you when a vulnerability, we can predict when a vulnerability is going to be exploited somewhere across the internet. And customers would go, okay, that's great, that's interesting, that will help me when I'm making prioritization decisions. But what about me? And we didn't have the capabilities back then, both internally, but I think in some cases the tech didn't even exist back then to be able to do what we're trying to do with Empirical, which is to answer that question, what about you, right? So taking in and building these large models around custom data that's just for your organization. Again, it could be the asset and vulnerability side, but it doesn't necessarily have to be all that. We can look at all of the detection and response telemetry, right, from XDR, EDR, SIM, et cetera, IDS. We can look at things from your custom threat intel that you might have for your org or your vertical. You might have information coming from your CSPM around cloud configuration issues, all of these different things that we're going to go in and then train a model that is very specific to you and your organization, that only you have access to it, and frankly it would only apply to you, and tell you what is the likelihood of something bad happening in the form of some sort of security incident over the next 30 days, 180 days, et cetera.
Yeah, okay. And am I right in saying you founded with a previous co-founder?
Yeah, that's not previous co-founder, but he was, so Michael Reutman, who's a co-founder here at Empirical, was our chief data scientist for basically the entire ride at Kenna. So he was like employee number 5 at Kenna. And then we have a third co-founder in Jay Jacobs. Jay is the person behind the exploit prediction scoring system, UPSS, which is used by a number of vendors across the industry, and lots of others as well. And prior to that, he was at Scientia. He was actually one of the original folks on Verizon DBIR as well.
What's made you want to go again?
Well, I think my wife was getting a little tired of my sabbatical, and definitely, and frankly, I felt like I probably got at least one more in me. And so I wanted to give it another go. So,
why not? Yeah. Tell us a bit more then. Talk to me a little bit more about Empirical, what you're getting up to. Is there a particular use cases at the minute? Obviously it's pretty early. Yeah, for sure. We're heavy into the model building mode right now, and collecting design partners and figuring out, we talked a little bit about these custom models that we're building for customers. One, we got to figure out, how doable is this? How do they perform versus a global model? How, do you get a much better lift off of looking at just your own data, or your own data in combination with data that we collect globally? So we want to find that out. And then once we prove that out and we think, hey, this is actually working, the next step is can I operationalize that and make that so we can, turn up a customer in the same day and train a new model and then retrain that model over time? And then how many models can we really maintain and handle? Because it's one to have one global model and you're just mapping to customers. We're taking the opposite approach, and there's going to be thousands of different models that we're going to have to continuously train, update, and maintain over time. How doable is that? We think that certainly the tech stack of the Databricks of the world, and Snowflakes, and some of the data lakes and data houses and things like that, or lake houses and things like that, have kind of enabled a lot more of that. So we can almost, for lack of a better term, terraform some of these models up on the fly. But we got to prove that out. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Kenna. So you was obviously a good 10-year run, successful exit. What was that feeling like when you got the acquisition?
It was good. It was really good. As you would imagine, especially after 10 years, this was not a overnight success by any means. In fact, in the early days, there were many times like, is this going to work at all? So we would definitely bump our heads up against the wall. We actually started kind of because of my background coming out of Orbitz, is we started in the mid-market, right? And we built some tooling and we built some software around addressing mid-market problems. What we later kind of found out was, at least for that particular problem, the risk-based vulnerability management, the bigger the org was, the more vulnerabilities they had. The more vulnerabilities they had, the bigger of a pain point this was. So we started to slowly shift up market to, at the end, we were very much an enterprise company. We still probably, if you looked at our customer base, there's probably more mid-markets in there than anything, but certainly our revenue was generated by the largest organizations in the world. So that was interesting, but it was good. Over that 10-year ride, like I said, there was a lot of ups and downs. We raised a total of a seed, a Series A, B, C, and Ds, which at the time was a total of $97 million, which now sounds quaint, I think, compared to some of the things out there. I think back at like our seed round back in like the beginning of 2011, it was like a $1.2 million seed round, and it's like, gosh, I think that's like at best friends and family these days. But
What's your relationship with Costanoa?
Yeah, so great question. Actually, Costanoa was an early investor in Kenna as well. They didn't come in our seed; they came in our Series A, and then expanded over time. And so originally met Greg Sands way back, and gosh, I want to say it was late 2012 at the time. And Costanoa was really early on as well. I probably shouldn't say this in a recording because I don't know if it's accurate, but I think I always say that I think we were the second investment out of their first fund.
Okay, wow.
And Greg can correct me if I'm wrong later on. But so we've known these guys for a long time, so it was a no-brainer then with Empirical when they came along. Is like, we want to work with these guys again for sure. They were a great support group.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. So what's the future for you now, and what do you think is going to evolve over the next couple of years? Because obviously we're only just sort of re-going again.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think we're going to learn a lot as we get into these companies and build these local models. I think, we certainly have some theories around what we can do. We believe that not only are we going to go deeper because we're, very customized to that customer's environment, but we think we can go wider because the data that sits inside the four walls at an enterprise is different than anything that you can collect on the internet of meaningful value. Meaning, looking at misconfiguration issues, looking at all of these types of things where they might have telemetry about that could tell us something interesting, but there's a lot of unknowns right now, and I'm positive that we're going to run into problems that we didn't think that we were going to run into or even thought that we could run into. And I'm really looking forward to that journey for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of problems, like you obviously had a ton of lessons learned over the 10-year run at Kenna. Like, is there any like really memorable moments?
Oh God, too many. Some of them burned painfully into my mind. I mean, we talked about that Series A way back in 2012. We were like painfully close to just running out of money altogether and having to shut the company down at that point. We also had some early memories around, so we did a go-to-market partnership with a large managed service provider, and I want to say this was like 2013, and we brought them on, and like in one day they had sold more of our product than we had sold in the first 2 years. Oh, wow. And I'm like, this is amazing, this is going to be the greatest, and they were signing up more and more people. And then, about a year and a half in, we start looking at this, and we should probably check and see on the usage. And most of them were not using the product at all. Some of them didn't even know that existed.
Wow.
It's like, and this managed service provider, who I will not name names, but they were basically going out and they would sell them a package of a whole lot of different things, and the customer would just buy this package, and they may pick or use some of that, but a lot of times it wasn't us. And it's like, guys, we're going to have a really big churn problem if we don't start working something out here. But one of the things that was exciting about that before we discovered that was at the launch, we went out to train all of their sales folks on how to sell our product and where the value was, what teams would use it, that sort of thing. And we go in, and it was their sales kickoff, and we go in and we train, all right, this is the SMB sales team, you're going to talk to them. All right, this is the large enterprise team, this is the APAC team, the Europe team, etc. And every team that would come in and we would train them, we're all bigger than our entire company. So obviously, we saw dollar signs in our eyes. This is going to be fantastic. And like I said, day one, we're like, this is working out better than anticipated. But then it turned out, it wasn't. It wasn't as great as one had thought.
Do you remember getting your first customer?
I do. I very much do. So I don't even know that they exist anymore. But so our first customer at Kenna. Actually, we went through a couple name changes, which I won't go into. But basically, our first customer was Sears Online. So if you remember the old department store Sears, which Chicago-based, I don't think they exist anymore. But they had an online presence as well, and we sold into them. And it was funny because we are a SaaS-based service, but nobody trusts SaaS, especially back then, a SaaS-based service, which was just a tiny handful of employees. So we ended up putting what is now affectionately termed Kenna in a box, and we put in an appliance and we racked it into their data center and all. It was painful, and thankfully that was to date the only box we ever created in our lifetime of the company, and I will not do that again.
What a ride! And I've got to get it in, but with AI, what's your take, and how do you see the next few years panning out with it?
I mean, it's interesting for sure. There's certainly, like I was just telling Michael, our co-founder, back when I went to RSA. I walked the show floor there, and I couldn't believe almost everybody is an AI company now, including companies that I know have been around for 25 years. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But there's definitely a transformation going on. I think we find a lot of valuable things within there, but what we take is the position of right tool for the job, right? And so we use AI or generative AI or LLMs for some pieces of model building, but it's not entirely that. In fact, I would say it's actually the minority of the models we built are running off of LLMs and things like that. But we actually use them also for labeling data to then take that data and then train what might be a more traditional machine learning model, or even something as simple as an XGBoost model to go out and help understand and label and categorize the data. Things that you would normally have to take a lot of humans to do, I can now do with AI and do it quite well as well. And there's other things that we are using in terms of being able to kind of understand various things that a misconfiguration might be caused by, or things where you could start to look at remediation and how do I go about best doing that. And we're in the early days of MCP, or Model Context Protocol, as well, where we start to see some of these services talk to each other and actually perform actions against each other. So it's early days. I think it's exciting. There's a lot of opportunity there, but we'll see how some of it plays out. I'm sure some of it's going to pan out fantastic, and other things are just going to go up in smoke.
We'll do another podcast in another year and see how we've got on. All right. And I guess, look, just wrapping it up, from all the lessons you've learned, all the problems you've had, all the wins, for any sort of founders or prospect founders that are looking to potentially launch, what one bit of advice might you give to anybody interested in going for it? Yeah, so
I'll give, I forget the old saying of I couldn't take the time to write a short story, so I wrote a long one. I got a couple pieces of advice. One is it always takes more time and more money than you actually think it will, you're going to run into problems. Bank on it. Hopefully those problems aren't bankrupting problems, but you are definitely going to run into those. So just plan ahead and know that it's going to take a while. The other thing is more about the space, specifically within cybersecurity, and what you would want to go after. I've always been a big fan, obviously, whether it's with Kenna or Empirical or other places as well, is there's really one of the biggest problems that we had, even way back at Orbitz, and I still see this today with security teams, is there's not enough people to do the amount of work that is ahead of them, right? And really there's two levers that any organization has there. One is prioritization or relentless prioritization, and Kenna certainly played into that. Empirical does some of that as well. Or automation, right? And being able to do things more with less. I think we talked a little bit about AI. I think in some cases you can combine those with AI too, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity anywhere where you can make it so the security teams can do more with what they already have.
Brilliant. Yeah. Ed, we could probably talk all afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Pleasure having you on, my man, and I wish you all the best of success.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
To the moon.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed today's show, please like and share with your friends and colleagues, as this is really important for the show's reach. If you'd like to be our next guest or are interested in Aspiron Search's staffing solutions, please get in touch directly with me or reach out to us via our website, www.aspironsearch.com.